Welcome, one and all, to this afternoon's live stream where I will be talking about Peacemaker. I'll also be talking about the Book of Boba Fett, tonight's WWE Royal Rumble, this week's AEW Rampage and Dynamite, along with anything else that you would like to talk about. This is an open mic section for anyone who would like to join me and talk about the latest TV show that they're watching or their favorite TV show from the past. Doesn't matter. Let's just talk. So, as you can see on the screen at the moment, there will be spoilers for both the Book of Boba Fett and Peacemaker for anyone who has not seen either one of the shows. Now, the reason why I am doing this, well, I'll tell you. Both shows have aired their 5th episode, and I figured with 2 episodes left of the Book of Boba Fett and 3 episodes left of Peacemaker, I can go ahead and give my thoughts on each series. Now, granted, these series are on 2 completely different ends of the spectrum, but I just thought I would share what I think about them, compared to what I've already said in either Pacific414 episode review or Pacific414 quick take. I just want to let you know that after 5 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, that it's not a good sign when you have 2 episodes that are very good and then 3 episodes that are kind of meh, kind of just not there, in my opinion. You have the Book of Boba Fett, which did have some hype to it before it began, especially after that end credit scene at the end of the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian. So people were expecting Boba Fett to essentially be a badass, because that's what we'd seen in his appearances in The Mandalorian, and it's also the reputation the character had gained in the expanded universe books, comics, you name it, the character has a certain reputation. But so far, when you have only 2 episodes, like I said, that are good, and 3 episodes that I could essentially just fall asleep and ignore, well, that's not good in my opinion. Now, I do realize there are people who are enjoying the Book of Boba Fett, and more power to you. If you are enjoying the Book of Boba Fett as it is, more power to you. For me, like I said, I was expecting it to be more action-packed. I wasn't expecting it to be a series where you see Boba the majority of the time either in a back to tank or he's talking. I mean, even Tamara Morrison mentions the fact that he believes that Boba is doing far too much talking in this series. And I will go ahead and bring up the article where he's saying that. And just like I do with the live editions of Pop Talk, I will also include the link in the description, as well as here in the chat. So if you want to read it for yourselves, well, here you are. There's the article. I will go ahead and put it on screen here in just a moment. Let me get it up here. And here we go. Now, this was posted a week ago on Geek Tyrant, so I do realize it's old. But I also feel that it's relevant to this discussion about the Book of Boba Fett. And it goes on by saying, Tamara Morrison says Boba Fett talks far too much in his Star Wars Solo series. And I don't know, that could be the look on my face, the look on anyone's face after watching 3 out of the 5 episodes of the series so far. And trust me, I don't want to bash this series, but again, it's just how it is. And hello, Jeff. How are you doing, brother? It's good to see you here. All right, so this article is going on by saying the Book of Boba Fett star Tamora Morrison has some thoughts on how Boba Fett is being portrayed in the live-action Star Wars series. In fact, the actor thinks Boba Fett is talking a little too much. Well, he's not alone in that. During a recent interview with NME, Morrison even says that he tried to pass some of his lines to Ming Na Wen, and he goes on by saying, I was not very successful. I was hoping not to say as much as I have already in the first two episodes. I speak far too much. In fact, in the beginning, I was trying to pass my lines to Ming Na Wen. I said, excuse me, director, I really feel that Ming Na Wen should say these lines because I want to stay mysterious. I want to stay quiet, which is true. Which is true. I mean, the first two times we actually see Boba Fett, first being in Empire, and then in Return of the Jedi, he doesn't say hardly anything at all. So I can understand where he's coming from there. And the article goes on to say, in response to that comment, Wen said he wasn't just trying to be a very generous actor, which he is. He was just trying to parlay some of the work to me. Laughs. Morrison goes on to recall calling writer Noah Clore with Jon Favreau as a way of asking him about cutting out some of the Boba Fett's lines. Okay. So, let's see, because it skipped on me and I lost track of my place. There we go. Boba Fett's lines to maintain the mistake he was talking about. Sometimes I'd say to Favreau, I think this is too much. I think this is too much, I said. No, at the scene tomorrow, I'm talking too much. This Boba Fett doesn't talk this much. Look, I've got all these photographs. I think we should get rid of it. And John's going to Atlanta, so don't tell him. Then that morning on set, I get a call from Atlanta. John wants you to say all that dialogue. Well, cut it out later, laughs. So he was even keeping an eye on us from all areas. Well, if you're the executive producer of the series, wouldn't you? So it continues by saying, I think Morrison has a point, as Boba Fett was always a man of few words. Then all of a sudden, now he's a lot more talkative. The guy has his own series now, though. So, of course, they're going to want him to have him talking more. Director Joe Johnston, the original concept artist who helped create Boba Fett, previously shared his thoughts on the return of the bounty hunter in the series. He explained that he would have never shown Boba Fett's face to help maintain the mystery of the character. And there's nothing wrong with characters having mystery. Look at Clint Eastwood in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He says hardly anything, if anything at all. Yes, the Padawan to be. I am talking your talk because despite what some people might think, I may be a baseball fan, I may be a Star Trek fan, but I'm also a Star Wars fan. I will admit, Star Trek was my first love. Then I fell in love with Star Wars. So, yes. And if anybody would like to come on, you're more than welcome to. This is an open mic for anyone who would like to join me and have a discussion about this. Okay. So it goes on to say, I do think keeping the mystique of Boba Fett would have benefited the show and character in certain ways, but I've been enjoying the show for the most part, and I'm looking forward to seeing how his story arc continues to play out. And yes, I am curious to see how these next two particular episodes do play out for the Book of Boba Fett. After all, in this last episode, The Return of the Mandalorian, which was a very good episode in my opinion, and yes, you can go ahead and say it was chapter 17, because it pretty much was. Well, let's face it, we only got Ming-Na Wen as Fennec Shand at the end, so this was an episode of The Mandalorian, but I did enjoy it. I'm not going to lie. And one of the reasons I enjoyed it is because I enjoy The Mandalorian. I know how some people feel about The Mandalorian. I can respect that. And let's see. Hello, Darius. How are you doing? You know what, guys? I'm going to go ahead and pin the invite into the chat. So if anybody does want to join, they're more than welcome to join. Let's go ahead. Yeah, give me 1 second. Okay, got that in there. Now let's go ahead and pin it. So there it is. If you would like to come on board, come on board. We don't have to stick with Boba Fett and Peacemaker. As it says in the title, I will be talking about more. Tonight is WWE's one of their main pay-per-views, the Royal Rumble. I will be watching it tonight because tomorrow night on the Star Wars Guys YouTube channel, I will be on there with Master Paul, and we will be going over the results of tonight's Royal Rumble pay-per-view. So, getting back to the Book of Boba Fett, I do want to show something. And let's see. Jeff is asking, was about to ask that last episode was free. All right, so I want to show something here. Let me get it on screen real quick. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up, in case anybody's wondering. Make sure I grab the right image here. All right. Not that one. That one yet. There we go. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about from the Book of Boba Fett was the sand creature right here. Now, if anyone has seen Clash of the Titans, you know that at one point in the movie, Perseus faces off against the Kraken in Clash of the Titans. And I will go ahead and bring up that image as well. So give me 1 second to do that. And let me grab the right image here. All right. This is the best one I could find. Anyways, here's the Kraken as it appeared in the 1981 Clash of the Titans. And I thought, very interesting. How they pretty much chose the same design. The only differences between the two is that the sand creature we saw in the Book of Boba Fett only had 3 fingers, where the Kraken has 4 fingers. And so, you know, that was something I found interesting. But another thing I want to talk about is in episode 4, where Boba and Fennec went over to the Sarlacc pit and they were looking for Boba's armor. I was thinking to myself, and I know it's been mentioned, but I just want to say this anyway, is that when Boba climbed out of the Sarlacc pit after digging himself out, he had his armor on. And in episode 4, Boba returned to the Sarlacc pit looking for his armor. Now, the only thing I could think of as to why he didn't remember the fact that he had his armor on is heat stroke. That's the only thing I can think of. I think he would have remembered the fact that he was in the Sarlacc pit with his armor on and crawled out of it had he not been so exhausted from climbing out of the Sarlacc pit and being in that sun. And of course, he had no idea that the Jawas took his armor. After all, they knocked him out. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think they just completely missed something there? Or do you think they just wanted to add another element where Boba, he just had no idea that he left the Sarlacc with his armor on because of the effects of the Sarlacc. The effects of the Sarlacc tapping into his mind, the effects of the Sarlacc's acid slowly digesting him. What do you guys think? Or do you think I'm just nitpicking? Because I will admit, I can nitpick. And not just about Star Wars, not just about Star Trek or anything else. And hello to Godzillionaire. And Godzillionaire is asking, are either of these shows worth watching? Neither one really feels like it's worth the effort. I have to be honest with you, Godzillionaire. The only reason I'm even still watching Boba Fett is because it's 7 episodes, and I figured once I got to episode 3, I would either stop watching it or continue to watch it to see if it got better. But if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, 2 out of 3 episodes are good. That's not a good win-loss record. I know Meatloaf said 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but really, I was expecting more. I had higher expectations for Boba Fett. Now, to answer your question about Peacemaker, I was mainly watching Peacemaker out of curiosity, and I've got to say, this show was weird. This show is very weird. And I know it's supposed to be weird and over the top, but it's very weird. It's like a train wreck, essentially. It's one of those things where you want to stop watching, but you can't stop watching because you're intrigued by the chaos that's going on around. Well, Padawannabe, if you would like to come on, you're more than welcome to come on and express your feelings. It's an open invitation, open mic. But yeah, I mean, these two shows are a completely different end of the spectrum when you're looking at both of them. Boba Fett is basically calm, cool, riding his bantha, not really doing any bounty hunting anymore, because he even mentions in an episode that he doesn't want to do bounty hunting anymore. He wants to create a better life for all the bounty hunters. But I don't know. That's the Boba Fett I want to see. I want to see the ruthless Boba Fett, the one that decides, you know what, you're not cooperating with me, I'm going to make you cooperate with me. information. I want that information, and I'm gonna get that information at any cost. And if it means I have to freeze you in carbonite, well, guess what? I'll freeze you in carbonite. If I have to feed you to the Rancor, I'll feed you to the Rancor. I was, I was just hoping we would get this. I'll admit, get this badass. That's what I was looking for. I'm not gonna lie to you guys and say, "Oh, I was hoping he'd be ho hum. Oh, everything's hunky dory. Everything's peace, love, rock and roll." No, that's not the Boba Fett I was looking for. I mean, having watched Empire Strikes Back multiple times, there's that scene with all the bounty hunters on the Star Destroyer, and Darth Vader goes right in front of Boba Fett, puts his finger up, shakes his finger at Boba Fett, and says, "No disintegrations." So obviously, Boba has a serious reputation of wanting to disintegrate people when necessary. Yeah, I understand, brother. I completely understand. But I wanted to see Boba Fett be the badass, and who we saw being the badass was Din Djarin in this last episode. Din Djarin was the one being the badass. Din Djarin was the one slicing people in half with the Darksaber. Granted, he also singed his left leg, but it was Din Djarin being the badass because Din Djarin is essentially Boba Fett. We all know that because we all know that there was supposed to be a Boba Fett movie. Disney decided, nope, it's not going to happen. They changed plans after Solo. Solo lost money. I know. I probably shouldn't infringe on Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, but Solo lost money. But could you say that lost money because people weren't interested? People had no interest in the story? Or maybe it's just Star Wars fatigue. It's happened with Star Trek before. In the 90s, you had Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise. By the time Enterprise came along, people were exhausted. And you want to know another factor into that? That other factor was the fact that you're getting the Next Generation movies. You got Generations, First Contact, and Insurrection during that time. So you could say it was Star Trek fatigue, and you could also say it was Star Wars fatigue. Or, again, like I said, maybe people just didn't want to see a prequel. I get that. Yes. And I want to say hello to Amen Fate. Welcome aboard. So, with Boba Fett, again, we still have 2 episodes left in the season. I'm really interested to see what happens in these next 2 episodes. Are we going to get that battle against the Pike Syndicate? And is this episode coming up going to be more than 30 minutes? Is episode 7 going to be more than 30 minutes? Especially if you're going to have a war against the Pike Syndicate. And who else is going to show up? We already know that Mando's going to be there with Fennec and Boba, but who else is going to show up? Who do you guys think is going to show up in these last 2 episodes? Do you think because they mentioned her in this last episode that Bo-Katan might show up? I mean, I'm curious. I have no idea who's going to show up. And who knows? Maybe no one else will show up. Maybe it'll just be Boba, Fennec, and Mando fighting off against the Pike Syndicate. And it seems like 2 large numbers to overcome, but hey, I'm not writing the series. And I'm not saying I could write any better for this series. I'm not saying I could write any better for this or better for Peacemaker, better for anything that's going on. But we really don't know who's going to show up in these next 2 episodes, and I'm curious. And I'm looking at it this way: if these next 2 episodes knock it out of the park, you win 4 out of 7 ball games to get to the World Series and win the World Series in baseball. Well, if you can win these next 2 games, so to speak, next 2 episodes, then 4 out of 3 is not bad. Not bad in my point of view. And let's see, Jeff, agree. The old guard treatments of the Boba character are better. Yes. And even Steve Perry, who wrote Shadows of the Empire, has had his take on the Book of Boba Fett. Now, I do talk to this in tomorrow's episode of Pop Talk that will be available at 11:30. So if you want to read what he said, either go to Bounding in the Comics, which I will go ahead and post a link, or you can watch the video tomorrow at 11:30, because I do have the link to that article in the description. So let me go ahead and get to Bounding in the Comics and get to that article. Let's see. Search for it real quick. Obviously, between the time I recorded tomorrow's episode and now, it's been moved. But this is the latest one for anyone who's I might be curious to read it. So there you go. But he brings up some interesting points about the direction of Boba Fett and the writing for the show, the directing for the show. I mean, am I wrong to say that I am disappointed with what we've gotten with the Book of Boba Fett because of what we've already seen in 2 seasons of The Mandalorian? What we've seen in 2 seasons of Mandalorian were, to me, like a Western, and I love Westerns. So having this Western setting in Star Wars, it appealed to me. Not to say Star Wars didn't appeal to me, it appeals to me. If it didn't appeal to me, I would have taken any time watching The Mandalorian, taking time watching the Book of Boba Fett, taking the time to watch Clone Wars, taking the time to watch Rebels, and taking the time to read some of the expanded universe books. Now, I haven't read those like a lot of other people, but I have taken the time to read some of them. But and maybe I am being too hard on the series, but I went in, like I said, with high expectations, and what I've seen so far, I'm not that impressed with. So again, what do you all think? Let me know. And again, if you would like to come on, the link to StreamYards is pinned in the chat. So you're all more than welcome to join on if you can. But shifting gears and getting back to Peacemaker, when it comes to Peacemaker, I have to admit, the wrestling fan in me was intrigued by the fact that here we have John Cena, who, in my opinion, is trying to take the Hollywood route like The Rock did and try to be a success like The Rock in movies. Whether it's going to work, who knows? But as a wrestling fan, I never really gravitated to the guys like John Cena. And let me see before I continue. Jeff has another comment. Been binging Firefly. Gotta love the Old West themes. Yes, yes. And that's another thing. Hearing rumors that Disney wants to reboot Firefly, not everything needs a reboot. Certain things just leave well enough alone. Leave the original as it is. Yes, it's unfortunate that we only had one season of that show. And that is unfortunate because the show was great. It wasn't just good, it was great. And, despite Josh Whedon now, Josh Whedon back then, when he wrote the show, that show was great. So I don't want to see a remake of Firefly, and that's another thing. I'm just tired of remakes. But getting back to Peacemaker, I was never a big fan of John Cena watching him in WWE. Never. I just got tired of his character, got tired of his never give up character. I was one of those fans that wanted to see a heel turn. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and bring up one of my own videos here from the night after WrestleMania 29, and just as a warning, there is some language in here, so if you're offended by any foul language, I do want to let you know that right now. So let me just pull it up here. All right. Let me get it up here in the window. And let me also put up a little warning. And before I do that, Pat, I want to be so close. Less than 10 minutes. All right, brother. Look forward to seeing you here. So let me just create another banner. All right, give me seconds. Right. One second here. All right. Let's go ahead and add the banner and put it on the screen. And let's go ahead and stop that one and share the proper one. And I'm going to go ahead and share the audio to this one since it's my own video. Let's go ahead and skip this intro real quick. And just in case, there you go. There is also the warning from the video. So you have been warned not once, but twice. And the disclaimer. And let's go ahead and get on to the video.
Maybe a little more than angry.
Woo!
I'm upset too.
No, you're not. You got a big payday.
WrestleMania is over. I get it. That's why you're upset.
Woo!
It's not to the foul language part yet.
I know. But then
Bullshit! 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 Bullshit!
Some of us were chanting boring. Some of us were chanting bullshit. Because we were tired of Cena's crap.
And it don't matter how you feel about me. Everybody sing here.
Boring, 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 boring.
All right, so if you guys want to watch the rest of the video, I will go ahead and post a link for it. And in the chat. But Cena's never been one of my favorites. Never will be one of my favorites. Yes, he should have. He should have. Even with his merch sales, they should have turned him heel. Because let's look at it this way. You know, there are some heels who can still bring in the merchandise, regardless of, you know, whether they're a face or they're a heel. There are some heels that can just attract the audience's attention. Every time they come out and they get on that microphone, they grab somebody's attention. That's what John Cena could have been able to do if they turned him heel. If anyone remembers his Dr. Orthogonomics gimmick, when he was a heel, he was tearing it up. Fans were enjoying it. Fans were getting behind him. Yes, I know that's why they turned him face, but fans were getting behind it because they were enjoying that persona, that character. And that's all we wanted to see again. Yes, we got teased with it when John Cena and The Rock were building up their match against each other at WrestleMania 28 in Miami, when Raw opened up with John Cena coming out and to his old theme music and wearing, you know, his old arena attire, which was pretty much a, you know, basketball shirt, basketball tank, and, you know, his shorts, but still people were eating it up because that's what fans wanted to see. Just like we want to see good Star Wars, just like we want to see good Star Trek, good Doctor Who, you name it. If you're also a fan of professional wrestling, you also want to see good storylines involving the wrestlers. You want to see good wrestlers get into a match and actually work well off one another. Put up a 5-star match. Put up that match that everybody talks about, you know, days after, years after. That's what you want to see. And let's see what else. Eamon Fate says he probably would have sold merch either way. Yeah, he would have. Think about it. Even when Stone Cold turned heel, he was still selling merchandise. You know, guys like The Rock, even though they were heel, still sold merchandise. There's a guy in AEW right now, and maybe some of you have heard of him. Maybe some of you haven't if you haven't been watching AEW. But Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF. People love to boo the guy, but he is so good on the mic. He is so damn good on that mic. And the words that come out of his mouth, the way he cuts his promos and matches are very good. He's a complete package. I was even saying to a friend when we used to do a wrestling podcast, unfortunately, due to his work schedule, we won't be able to do it for some time now. But I was saying to a friend that Maxwell Jacob Friedman is the next Ric Flair. And the thing about him is you don't want to turn somebody like that face. because he does get good face pops, but you don't want to turn people like that face. Yes, exactly. Amen, Fate. Exactly. Hollywood Hogan. Even though some people were shocked that Hogan turned heel, there were people still rooting for him, especially the NWO. And I do want to say hello to Captain Trek. Captain Trek, in this live stream, I am talking about the Book of Boba Fett. I'm also talking about Peacemaker. I will also be talking about All Elite Wrestling and WWE. This is an open mic, so if anyone does want to come on, the link has been pinned into the chat. But if you would like me to DM you the link, I can do that as well. But yeah, like Eamon Fate was saying, Hollywood Hogan, heck, Macho Man Randy Savage, he was still very popular even when he turned heel. Yeah, people booed him at times, depending on the result of the storyline, but still, he was very popular. A lot of those guys that Vince McMahon casted off saying they were too old to compete in WWE, too old to waste his time promoting, they went over to WCW and they rejuvenated their careers. A lot of them did. Now, some of them eventually came back to WWF before it became WWE and were able to rekindle their careers. I mean, Big Boss Man, he came back and he was able to rekindle his career in WWF during the Attitude Era. But getting back to Peacemaker, I do want to say that because I wasn't a fan of John Cena, and I have seen the Suicide Squad, I just, wasn't sure what to think about the series. Yes, James Gunn has a reputation of being a good director, especially with what he's been able to bring, with Guardians of the Galaxy. But as I was watching episode 1, I kept watching it going, what in the world is this? This is crazy. This is insane. Now, yes, there are people who are enjoying Peacemaker. And again, like I said with the Book of Boba Fett, I'm going to say the same thing with Peacemaker. If you enjoy it, good. We're all able to enjoy what we'd like. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, tell you, oh, come on, what's wrong with you? No, I'm not going to do that. You like what you like. And real quick, Jeff is saying that he misses Andre the Giant. Yes, what a great entertainer he was. And Jeff also says, yeah, I'm old and old school. Brother, there's nothing wrong with that. We like what we like. There are eras of TV that we like more than others. There are eras of wrestling that we like more than others. There's eras of sports that people like more than other eras. But when I was watching the first episode of Peacemaker, I was thinking, wow, this show is weird. This show is weird. But because HBO Max had released the first 3 episodes all at the same time, I figured, all right. So I wasn't that impressed with the first episode. I will go ahead and give these other 2 episodes a shot, which I did. Still not, overall impressed, but something just telling me, just give this series a chance. And I'll give you a perfect example of another series where I said I'm going to give it a chance. And before I do that, I do want to welcome my guest at this time, the Padawannabe. Hello, Padawannabe. Welcome aboard. Can you hear me, brother? Can you hear me? Hear me. Can you hear me now, brother? All right. I can't hear you at all, brother. In the meantime, Darius says word, and he also says, and then he bought WCW. Exactly. I remember watching Nitro that night when you had the simulcast of Raw and Nitro, and you had that segment where Vince comes out, he's gloating about the fact that he bought his competition. And, then as he's cutting this promo in Cleveland, down there in Florida at Panama Beach, out comes Shane McMahon. And real quick, the Padawannabe says, sorry, I'm trying. My audio is not coming through. That's all right, brother. Keep trying. But, when Shane McMahon came out and, cut that promo and, we had the invasion angle and it was going to be WCW versus WWF. I was pumped at the time. At the time, I was pumped. But what we ended up getting ended up falling flat because you didn't have a lot of the big names associated with WCW as part of that story angle, as part of that feud. You didn't have the guys like Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, Sting. You didn't have those guys. And even the people that were shown that night, you didn't have them. You didn't have Ric Flair. You didn't have the Nature Boy. It would have been awesome if they had been able to bring those guys in. But all right, brother. How you doing, Padawannabe? Unfortunately, it's still not working. Well, here. Padawannabe, have you tried refreshing to see if maybe that'll help fix it? Tell you what, brother. Yeah, I was going to say I'll go ahead and remove you, but you've already removed yourself. So, anyways, on the topic of discussion, yes, talking wrestling, but it does in a little way relate to what I'm talking about when it comes to Peacemaker, since John Cena came from wrestling. When it came to Peacemaker episode 3, things started to come together a little bit. But to get to what I was about to say, was there was a series that I wasn't really sure about, and I didn't think I was going to review it for very long. And that series was Chucky. Now, for anyone who is familiar with Chucky from the Child's Play movie series, he's the murderous doll. Well, I was thinking, how is this going to work making a TV series based upon the movie series Child's Play? How is Chucky going to work? And, watched episode 1. I gave that 2.5 out of 5. Watched episode 2, 2.5 out of 5. Watched episode 3. It started to get better, so I gave that a higher rating. Then I watched episode 4, episode 5, episode 6, episode 7, and episode 8, and really enjoyed it. And that's kind of the same thing that's happening right now with Peacemaker for me. I didn't like the first few episodes, but now at episode 5, I'm thinking, all right, this is getting interesting. The things that are happening in this series are getting very interesting. It's not perfect. I'll admit it, it's downright stupid. But it's one of those things where there's parts of the plot that are getting very interesting. There are characters that are in it that are, very interesting. And as a matter of fact, let me go ahead and put them on screen real quick. Bear with me. Let's see. Not there, not there. All right, here we go. But you have Hardcore, you have John, you have Chris Smith, aka Peacemaker. You also have Merv, you have Vigilante, and then you have Lola and Amaya. And honestly, her character's really growing on me. Now, she is the daughter of Amanda Waller. So right now, what her path is, and this is where the spoilers come in, is she, being Amanda Waller's daughter, is tasked with framing Peacemaker. In this latest episode, she received a text from her mother asking if she had planted the diary in Peacemaker's trailer. And she had not. Yes. The guy's name is Merv. Not Merv Griffin. Nah, unfortunately, he's long since passed away. Yes. So, Darius, let me ask you, have you seen Peacemaker? And what do you think about it? Because Eagly does actually give Christopher Smith, Peacemaker, a hug in the first episode, which I thought was I thought was silly. But a silly kind of funny. All right, here's the Pat I want to be.
Okay, I can finally hear. Well, we're good. Here we go.
All right, brother.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, brother.
Okay, my internet is being goofy, so it might switch between Wi-Fi and my internet connection. So hopefully we can keep going. But you keep going with what you're doing, and I'll try to catch up because I've missed the last couple minutes of talk here.
Okay. Well, as I was saying, with Peacemaker and his pet eagerly giving him a hug. I thought that was stupid, but a good kind of stupid, thinking, oh, they're trying to, give you this soft spot. And then you have Robert Patrick, who's playing August Smith. And just a little refresher on who Robert Patrick is. All I gotta say is T1000. And I'll tell you, he's good at playing an asshole in this series, because that's what his character is. His character is a complete asshole.
You're talking about John Cena's character, correct?
Yeah, I'm talking about John Cena's character, and then also Robert Patrick's character, August Smith, his father. And
oh yeah, both of them. They're ridiculous. Yeah. Some older viewers can look at this and go, okay, I might have a semi kind of questionable relative or an older great grandparent or something like that. But they're really taking that stereotype and just throwing it to the wind. Like, it's over the top. But when, as a comic book and a fan of this kind of stuff, you're connecting the dots. It's like, okay, they're trying to make it a superhero type show. So the white dragon persona they're trying to make it larger than just humans on humans kind of thing, if you can follow what I'm trying to say, because it still technically is a superhero show, although nobody has powers.
Yeah, and there's also those jabs at various superheroes. Like last episode had a jab at Batman, and
oh yes,
this episode had a jab at Superman.
And I mean, even the old man next door, because when I watch Suicide Squad, it's like, okay, Peacemaker, all the people on Suicide Squad aren't necessarily heroes, but they'll do egregious deeds, and they will kill to get their goal met. So in that aspect, they're more of like what they say they are. They're a military black ops organization.
Mm-hmm.
But they're playing up the personalities so high. I mean, everybody, they're doing it with everybody. And like I heard you mention with the Eagle. See, that's right off the bat. When I watched put the first episode on and you get into it, you're like, okay, I can totally get the dialogue. We're going Guardians of the Galaxy, kind of, how Peter Quill was very kind of brash, and he would use, turd, and, he would say things that most of the other heroes wouldn't say. Well, Peacemaker is just, that much overkill on everything. His dialogue, his movements, his weapons, just all that stuff. And the Eagle, that was like, okay, we're watching James Gunn, and with my experience with his movies, you have to be able to take a step back and add some disbelief in, or you won't enjoy it the way they're trying to make you enjoy something like that. It is a total different line of humor.
It's like, the back and forth banter between, John and Chris. And, Chris keeps calling him Diebeer, and he made fun of his PowerPoint presentation in this last episode.
Yeah, all that stuff, to me, it's like, okay, they're making it relatable. Like, we've all had a business meeting, and it's like, God, man, who put this report together? What are we watching? And I think it's funny that they add a lot of those almost like locker room kind of jokes into it. And they even mention it as locker room.
Yeah, in this last episode they did.
Yeah, there's so much of it. And even with himself, he's not an extremely intelligent man. And even though his dad is extremely intelligent, they're kind of redneck. They're country boys, They still really don't know how to deal with your emotions. And I think that's what this series is for Peacemaker, because he was the jerk in Suicide Squad who would do anything. And then when he killed Rick Flag, I think that really
It changed him.
it changed something in him. It made him start thinking very differently about his life. You know, and we see it if you've watched all the few episodes, he makes the comment like, "Hey, I'm willing to kill as many men, women, and children as it takes, but I'm not going to do it just because you say."
Mm-hmm.
So his morality is coming in a little bit, but it's kind of funny to see such a macho character that he is and try to kind of come in touch with his feelings, and he's still fighting against it. He's like, "No, I'm not crying," kind of stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm. Because he doesn't want to admit that he has vulnerabilities.
Oh, exactly.
He wants
Yeah. And when they tell him that they know his story, and he's like, "No, you don't. You don't know anything about me." And I think he thinks if people knew about him, they wouldn't want to be around him, because there's obviously something with his brother that we haven't quite discovered what happened there yet. And then there is the one episode when his father has him do something pretty bad. I'm trying not to give too much away for everybody, but it's, to me, this kind of show for me is much more relatable, because there's things you see in it that you see in real life. I've seen not that particular car, but I have seen many cars over the years with the American flag painted on them, just like that guy's car.
Mm-hmm.
So and yeah, but the Eagle, that's really, if you can handle that, you can handle the series. If something like the Eagle, or even the way Vigilante acts, if you can't really just kind of accept that, then this is not going to be a show you will be pleased with, because you really have to suspend a lot of disbelief here. And it's a fun show. They're not really trying to be serious.
No, they're not. And even with Vigilante, I just had to, step back and say, okay, he's their version of Deadpool. That's how I look at it.
More or less, yeah. But he's that guy. He's almost like that kid, that used to do the sword fighting in his backyard and had a bow and arrow and a crossbow, when he was a freshman, and did all that kind of stuff. And he was always like, he wasn't in the mainstream, but then he's like, "Hey, yeah, I know how to," he's almost like an assassin Boy Scout, because he's got all that kind of knowledge, but he's just a normal guy. He's a sweet guy. He's just trying to be like, "Nope, I'm hardcore. That's what I believe, and that's what I am." And it's, so you definitely get the comedy there.
You do. And Darius, I hope I haven't offended you, because Darius is saying comic books aren't real.
That's funny.
I don't know how to break this to you, but no, they're not.
Comic books are the comic books are hearsay. It's like you hearing the story from somebody else. So there's some parts that are real and some parts are fake.
Yep. But
yeah, I'm looking at the chat real quick. The Eagle hug, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was. But what I'm interested to find out in the next episode is, what's going to happen with August. Yes, August isn't exactly that character that you want to look up to, but still, with the events that happened in episode 5, you're kind of curious to see, okay, so does August eventually get out? Does Chris eventually go into the slammer? What's going to happen here? It makes you want to tune in each and every week.
Well, yeah, and because the people are working through the system, I don't think Chris will get arrested. I think eventually those two investigators, I think, are just on the wrong side right now. They don't know what's going on, just kind of like Peacemaker doesn't know what's going on exactly. You know, he didn't know he was fighting aliens until he saw it. And now they still really don't know the case because you see the little, you know, the bug that he captured, he's going to get a different story from that bug. So their perspective's going to change. And then Myrn, I'm just not sure how it's going to play out quite yet. I don't think Myrn will kill her, but there's definitely going to be the next episode. We should find out, because it's almost like a stalemate right now, because Peacemaker and his friend have that bug, and they're going to find something out from him, and it's going to be the opposite of what Myrn and the other infected are doing. So I'm almost thinking, well, maybe it's like a civil war of the aliens or something, but I'm not quite sure yet.
It could be any kind of power struggle.
Because it's really just, I can't remember if it was a cutscene or not on the 5th episode, or not a cutscene, but the after credit scene, or if it was actually just at the end of the show, where they see the bug paint the symbol on the jar. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I didn't see the cutscene after I saw Merv tackle.
Then because I think the cutscene, I think what I saw was happening in next episode. That's why I don't really want to give too much away, because they show what's going to happen in the next episode, like a tease.
Okay.
After all the credits, and I watched that too, so I just don't want to give. All I'll say is the bug that Peacemaker has does something that's going to make Peacemaker wonder about the bugs. So we'll have to see. I don't think Myrn will kill. Is it Adebayo? I can't remember her name right now.
Adebayo,
yeah. I think he'll keep her captive, because he still needs to get his mission done. Just because he's found out, we'll have to see how that goes. But his dad is definitely going to come into play at some point, for sure.
Definitely. I mean, the way they're building his character up too, and the fact that you have Robert Patrick playing him, he wouldn't come in and play a character that only gets a few spotlight performances, and then after that, nothing else happens.
Yeah, I agree with that. That particular actor, he strikes me as one of those guys like, oh, something drew him to this. You know, he might have been a comic book fan at some point in his life, you know, or might like this kind of thing. But for me, the larger actors don't come in unless they really want to. Kind of how Ming-Na showed up in Book of Boba. It's like, that must be a really good character for them to be wanting to be it.
Yep. And Darius says, next you'll be telling me I'm not really a cowboy, a cyborg in a cowboy hat. No, Darius, you actually are a cyborg in a cowboy hat.
We are all robots.
I'm not saying that, brother.
No, Peacemaker, I enjoy. I will fully endorse it as I know there's a sect of people out there that just will not get it. You know, they don't have a liking for this kind of off the cuff absurdity that this show is.
And that's exactly what it is. It's one of those series where I've had to tell myself, just switch off the brain. If you keep your brain on, you're going to overthink everything that's going on, and that's not what the series is intended to be. In my opinion, at least. And if you don't mind me asking you, what are your thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett, 5 episodes in?
Okay, well, I look at it a little different, because I went into it with the same thing everybody else did. You know, we see what Mandalorian is, and we see what Robert Rodriguez does with the Boba Fett character in his one episode. And then him coming out and saying that the series is going to be all killer, no filler. I think that's where that's the big thing. You know, they hyped it up so much. Oh, you guys are going to love this. You're going to love it more than anything you've seen so far. Not thinking a lot of people don't want the mob story. And that's what Book of Boba is. Book of Boba is your gangster mob story to the T. It's, let's see who I'm dealing with. Let's see how much muscle they got. Let's see what territory they control. Let's see how they control it. Then let's move in. It's the whole series so far has just been a chess match for Boba. And unfortunately, the series needs to be longer if it's going to bring people back, I think. Because I don't see how they can I don't know if they can bring Boba back to his mercenary style so quickly, believably. And he's definitely a different man now. We get that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was all business all the time until he almost died in the pit. And what I take from him falling in the pit, and this stuff, I go way back for Star Wars. I remember being a kid and going to Return of the Jedi, knowing Boba Fett was in the movie. And then, 15 minutes in, you see him crash. And I just, I'm like 8 years old. I just hung my head for a few minutes. It's like, man, are you kidding me? Really? My favorite character, and he's dead already? As a kid, that was kind of heartbreaking. But over the years, getting all the stuff introduced, the EU, I've read quite a bit of EU. I haven't read as many comics as I wish I could have, but I'm aware of a lot of the stories and a lot of the things that went on because I was trying to keep it all consistent. I didn't know exactly what was new, and finding new stuff then meant just going to the bookstore. It was a lot. There weren't really websites out for this stuff until like the Clone Wars series started coming out, and then a lot of leaks and things like that started emerging because the internet was getting bigger. But Boba, he is the guy everybody wants him to be, but we may not see the guy everybody wants to see in this series. I'm just not sure. We're gonna have a big battle scene with him, and he's gonna kick ass, but I don't know if people will receive the entire series as well. I'm enjoying it just because I'm getting more of Boba. Give me everything. I'll soak it all in. This will be a show that I'll watch repeatedly, and I'll buy it when it comes out. But I just don't think it's what everybody really, really wanted, unfortunately.
And you're right on that fact because, like I said, it's not what I was looking to see. I was looking to see Boba come in, show that he's this badass, and we haven't seen that. And again, being in that Sarlacc pit would change you.
Yeah. Man, he says it several times. How many times have we been given crap jobs, basically? How many times do we do stuff knowing it's going to be a suicide mission for people that would just roll over if they were confronted? They work for cowards half the time. And then the other half the time, they're working for people like the Hutts who have so much power. But if you strip the power away, again, they're not much. So he's tired of it. He's tired of seeing his brothers in arms die. We've seen him, you know, he's not a clone, and he always made the big distinction that he was not a clone. But he still knows what they look like, and he still knows they all died. It's not like he didn't know them. I'm sure there was clones he knew quite well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Just being on Camino all the time, I don't see how Boba couldn't have had some kind of relationships like that, you know. But then he loses his father, he loses his bounty hunter team, he loses his mother figure. And so, for all we know, all that time, all those stories we hear of Boba Fett, you know, the EU said he got a family and all that, but now we have to we have to not consider any of that. So maybe Boba's just been on his own for the past 20 or however many years, you know, and that would be a very lonely, tired existence. You know, he's got plenty of credits, so I understand it like he's just been working his whole life, you know, and now like he's supposed to be 60-ish now, and I just think he wants to enjoy his credits. But becoming a crime boss, that's not a bad thing. It's just not. Mobs don't have big fights. They have big encounters, and then that's kind of it. And then everything's quiet for a while, and then it explodes again.
And Captain Trek is saying that Boba was a clone.
And Boba was a clone, but he's the only clone that is exactly Jango. No other clone is what Jango was, because they bred them for certain things. So if you're bred for certain things, physically and mentally, automatically you're going to be different right off the bat. They were trained very different from Boba. They were trained military style. Then we had, you know, there's commandos and all these elite soldiers and stuff like that. But we got to think, well, Boba was basically trained by a black belt in his stuff. You know, his arms and working with the armor and learning how to do things Mandalorian style. Which again, the clones weren't they didn't even teach them to fight Mandalorian style. So while he is a clone, there is nobody that's even close to what Boba is.
Exactly.
I just, you know, that's what everybody wanted to see. They wanted to see how singular he was. Like, let's see how good he is. And I think he'll show up in the Mandalorian. If we really think it's Book of Boba, as they were saying, it's going to be Mandalorian 2.5, the story and all this stuff makes a little more sense.
Well, even in the episode where we see Boba use the gaffy stick and he shows Mando his chain link code, he says, "This is my father. This is me. This is the lineage."
Yeah, and that I didn't do a whole big deep dive on the chain code, but in my idea, if the chain code is your DNA, Boba should look exactly. His chain code should be almost exactly what what Jango's was. They should be almost identical. So it's making me wonder about the black saber, because I've heard a lot of things go. Do some research, but Boba could, or Jango could have been the rightful heir to that darksaber. And if Jango was, then Boba's kind of automatically. But I would have to do some research and see what's still canon and what's not, and what applies and what doesn't.
Yeah, I've even heard people speculated after I had already done my review for this latest episode of the Book of Boba Fett, where a lot of people were thinking maybe the darksaber isn't supposed to go to Din. Maybe it's supposed to go to Boba. Maybe it's supposed to go back to Bo-Katan. Who knows?
Yeah, and we'll see about that because I know, having watched the Clone Wars, the only thing with Bo-Katan is she never actually wins it.
Mm-hmm. It was handed
It's
to her.
getting fuzzy on me. Here, let me see if I can. God, my internet is still not.
I mean, that moment where, you know, the dark
Kidding.
saber was handed to her. It's like, okay, well, I guess that makes you the de facto leader of Mandalore. And then, of course, in chapter 16 of The Mandalorian, we hear that the dark saber is supposed to be won in battle. So they contradict one another.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, brother.
Okay, well, repeat the last sentence. They contradict
I
each
was
other.
I was saying how when Sabine handed Bo-Katan the dark saber, and that made her the de facto leader of Mandalore, and then Din Djarin goes to hand
Yeah.
Bo-Katan the dark saber back at the end of episode 16, and we've already learned that the dark saber has to be won in battle. It contradicts one episode contradicts the other.
Yes, exactly. And that's kind of a lot of the I can't. A lot of the disagreeing point, that's what they're talking on. But we never, the only thing I can go into in that is we never saw Sabine or not Sabine. We never saw Bo-Katan handle the Darksaber. If we did see that, they may have shown that maybe she couldn't handle, maybe it would have been too heavy for her, which would show that she's not really the one that's supposed to be handling it at the same time. And so that's a little piece that I think if we would have seen that, it would have at least filled in some details. But that's that. Yep. When Bo-Katan received it the first time, I think that's why she doesn't take it from Din, because whatever happened didn't work out.
No.
So she definitely knows she needs to win it. But now that, Din won it, and now that I don't know if she's thinking she's got to fight him, or I don't know what her thoughts are right now. She's still super mad at Moff Gideon. So that needs to be kind of sewn up, I think, before. I think they'll probably finish that Moff Gideon Bo-Katan storyline off before she starts going after the Darksaber again. So I don't know if that would take us all the way through Mandalorian. I don't know. If I do think Bo-Katan will show up in Book of Boba because of John Filoni, because that, his creation. So I think she'll make an appearance. Din, the way they're doing it, I just don't know.
Yeah, because, she could show up in this next episode, especially with the fact that Dave Filoni directed this next episode.
Because
that's coming up on Wednesday.
Yeah, and they show the whole episode didn't have Boba in it, which makes me think maybe Boba is gone trying to get a hold of the Bounty Hunters Guild. Or some other people, because Fennec was still there on planet, and she knows Din Djarin better than Boba does, so her hearing about him makes sense. She's like, oh, he's here? I'll go get him. I'll see what he's doing. And so I think Boba is somewhere else looking for people too. The only place I can really think of him going would be the Bounty Hunters Guild. But then that pulls in the rest of the Mandalorian cast, Grief Karga and all those guys. So we'll just have to see. It's just so weird that this episode went this way and we have so little left. in the supposed season, you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean, especially about the supposed season where, you know, a season long order of episodes used to be 24, 26 episodes, and now they consider 7 episodes, 6 episodes, 8 episodes a season.
Yeah. And even the shows that were those 24 episodes, I remember when they started breaking them up and you would have mid-season where they'd go 12 to 14 episodes and then you'd have to wait a couple months to get the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's the less episodes hurts. Having it be streaming and, you know, what we've dealt with the past 2 years, I understand things. And I know they still haven't really decided on episode numbers yet for streaming. It's almost like they just, however long the writing is, and we can make this many solid episodes, well, that's our season, whether it be 7 or 12 or 6. It's a totally different process. They don't have those numbers just nailed down. Like, what, we don't know what to expect ever. And from this series, we don't even know how long the episodes are gonna be.
No,
Because none of them have been consistent at all.
no, we have episodes that are 30 minutes, episodes that go on to 40 minutes, episodes that are almost an hour. And even with The Mandalorian, we've had episodes as short as 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts.
Yeah, I think I remember looking at one and going, God, 24 minutes. Wasn't the last episode like almost 40? So yeah, there's a definite difference there. But we'll see. And, you know, these next 2 episodes, if they're 45 minutes apiece, they might be able to fit all that stuff in. You know, it just seems like a lot. I don't think we're going to get all the cameos that people think we're going to get. I think if we get them, it'll just be in passing. Like, I don't think there would, if Han and Chewie show up, say, I don't think there would be a big story plot with them. I think it would just be, hey, we're here to help kind of stuff. What can we do? If they even get that far, it could be a bunch of hologram communications between people. Just as much as I hear through the rumors, it seems hard enough for them to finish this story in 2 shows with a decent ending without having to cram all this stuff in. But Filoni in Clone Wars can run the ensemble cast. He can run several main characters together in one story. I guess we just have to see if he can do that in live action as well as he did it in the animation.
Exactly. And I've got a question for you. And it's a yes or no question. Do you think we might see Cara Dune show up? Because there were those rumors that Gina Carano did visit the set. So do you think that's a possibility?
I don't think she'll show up in Boba. I am not entirely sure if she'll show up in season 3 of Mando, which really bugs me because she was one of my favorite characters. I'm not saying this because I don't want to see her. I would love to see her back. I just don't know. I don't know how they're going to work that. I don't know if they're really considering bringing back the same character or if they're going to have her be somebody else, which to me might be hard to accept. I want to see her, but I think they're going to write for season 3 of The Mandalorian. I think they're going to write something, because if she does come back, it will probably be in 4. But in 3, they could give us an idea of where she's been. Like maybe she went to help try and get, I can't remember his name now. The prisoner, Esposito's character. Maybe she was going to go with them to make sure he got transported to the right place and maybe he escapes. So they might think Kara's hurt or they took her prisoner or something.
So you think she might be part of that group that's going to be keeping an eye on Moff Gideon?
Well, she still seems very attached to the Republic. You know, like she was okay being the marshal there. She took the badge. She doesn't really want to get involved, but she's not trying to stay away. So to me, and that was her thing, like we need to take him to the Republic because they want him for questioning. He'd be, you know, they'd be able to get all kinds of information out of him. But Bo-Katan wants to take him back just to make him answer for his crimes against Mandalore. So they do have kind of a head-to-head there. So I'm not sure if that's going to become if that would become a bigger thing. Because at the end of Mando, we just know Bo-Katan, Mando, Cara, and Fennec Shand are all in the room at the end of the season. So then we find out later, okay, we know where Fennec Shand ends up. Cara Dune unfortunately got let go after that, so we'll have to see how they reintroduce that. And that so Bo-Katan is left. So she's got the bad guy. And you know, so I don't know if they can just let go of that plot and have them all show up. That's the thing that's where I just don't know how they can intertwine it all in because they left it. People still kind of had things to do, you know, and
it's still plot threads that needed to be sewn together. And
and they kind of show us it's been a little bit of time because Din is obviously going back and making money the way he was, and he's pulling the Blacksaber out. So to me, that shows he's trying to get used to it. I don't think that was the first time he used it. So however many months have gone by, and it's like, okay, so where I assume they got somewhere with, I just don't know if they ended up on Mandalore or the moons of Concordia, I guess is where Bo-Katan would want to take him, or if they'd end up on a Republic planet. I don't know. And to me, that's kind of, well, that would tell us what's going on. That would tell us where Bo-Katan is, if she can help. That would tell us where Cara Dune is, if she can help or if she can't. You know, that is kind of a big point. I don't know. That's the only thing that makes me question if we'll see those characters or not. Because it's like, I don't see how they can just put them in. There would be so much unanswered. Which they would answer in The Mandalorian, I would assume. You know, and we'd have to wait for that.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I hate it when characters just show up out of the blue with no explanation whatsoever on why they're there, how they got there, and how long they're going to stick around.
Yeah, it depends on if they can write it into the story or if it's just out of convenience. You know, because they can do it. They've shown us in other shows how they can do it. And then we've seen it done wrong too. And I'm hoping, you know, if anybody's aware of these particular kind of agenda aspects, I would think it would be these guys, you know, this team that's leading these shows. And we'll just have to see, you know, it's an experimental time and they're trying to figure it out more than we are. It's like, okay, what can we actually make that people will take seriously and accept and not trash for the wrong reasons? You know, I think it would be tough to create now, knowing a certain margin of your productivity is going to come from backlash. You know, you just have to expect there to be some negative press about anything you say now. And it's how can we move through that without disrupting what we're still trying to accomplish?
Yeah, they're walking a tightrope. They're walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
Even if they do something that the majority of the fans enjoy and it's received very well, there's still going to be that small contingent that's going to get on their board and read to the high heavens. Yes, we'll just have to, you know, and the things that I
say like we've seen it in Marvel. You know, it's a similar team that we're dealing with, and we saw how Marvel could make movies that worked very well, and then we saw movies that didn't work so well. And I'm just hoping they can. To me, there's enough in Star Wars, enough genders, enough races, enough politics in it already that they can just write. If they can write a good story, all that other stuff shows up naturally. And that it always has. We never questioned it before. Oh, there wasn't enough women in Star Wars. You know, those questions just never really came up because the story was great and everything wasn't out of convenience. It's like, no, we wrote a good female lead. We wrote a good, believable story. So as long as they can connect the dots enough so that we're not finding plot holes, because that seems to be what a lot of fans kind of do now, is they're really like, well, this doesn't make sense or this can't make sense. And it's like, well, it's not all gonna be perfect, you know. Growing up, I was pleasantly surprised when they would write a book and it lined up with the movies, or the comics actually followed what you were seeing on your favorite cartoon. And now people expected it. And it's like, there was a time when that stuff didn't even match up at all. You know, movie producers just flat out would say, we don't have to make it look like that. We're going to make it look the way we want to do. And now they're at least we're in the fight. You know, at least our opinion is coming in and getting put in the cards.
Exactly. I mean, there are plenty of times where I don't want to know all the information. I don't want to have it all thrown at me at once. Leave some mystery. Some things don't always have to be solved when it comes to a particular character's arc. I don't want to, you know, get a prequel explaining something that was mentioned in, you know, a future storyline. No, I don't need to know everything. Leave that mystery. Leave us guessing. Leave us, you know, creating whatever it is that we've been told or seen in a show that happened in the past. Leave it to our imagination. Let us create that story.
Yeah, there is a point when you learn too much about something and it becomes too familiar. And then you're not quite as willing to go back to it so much. There always needs to be that idea that maybe they can't do it. But they do it, and that's what makes all of us keep watching.
Yep. It's like, you know, I've watched the one season that we've gotten so far of Star Trek Picard. I watched all 10 episodes, and at the end, it just felt like it was an empty shell to me. It had no meaning. It didn't add to the character in any way, shape, or form. If anything, they tore the character of Captain Picard down and made him a shell of a man that he was.
Yeah, that show, I watched Picard and I watched as much as Discovery's been released. I just don't see the stuff as it comes on the networks. So I've seen, I think it's the first 2 seasons of Discovery and the first season of Picard. And I watched it all because I like Star Trek. And Picard, the biggest thing for me was over and over in the first few episodes, I was like, how can these people speak to Jean-Luc Picard this way? It was almost as if he was a constant problem for them the whole time he was in service. And now that they have him out, they're glad to be done with him, which doesn't make any sense from what we've seen.
Not when I was going to say, not when Starfleet relied heavily on his experience as a Starfleet captain.
Now, when
as a negotiator, someone that can go into territories and negotiate with 2 sides that are warring against each other and bring them together for peace.
And you see hints of it. You kind of see, you know, you see him kind of, he tells off the Starfleet, basically. He's like, you know, I'm going to do what I need to do. Like he always does. But they were just so offhanded with him, you know, and it's like, can't you just leave us alone and let us do what we want to do? And it was very obvious that they're doing, you know, there was those moles inside that were obviously trying to keep Picard away from finding out the problem, you know, so that kind of makes sense. But Picard never has those captain moments in this series ever. Until he starts talking with the old crewmates. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're Jean-Luc Picard. Why do something? You know, and that's kind of what we're saying as fans the whole time, too.
Well, I mean, you know, where's that inspirational speech, you know, to pep
all
up
that
a crew
writing
member
went to Discovery. That was the thing I noticed immediately with Discovery is, okay, I guess we're going to get one of these big speeches at the end of every single episode. And that was not something they did before. But yeah, he wasn't that. I mean, Captain Picard inspired people just by standing up and saying, we can do it, you know, or whatever. Just by standing up and moving to the front gave people hope. And he does not have any of those really triumphant moments. And it's called Picard, but it's very obviously about the woman cyborg, you know. I mean, and that story, you know, that to me, it was almost like an old story they were just bringing back. And it started getting weird after a while when I realized Data wasn't going to be around at all, you know, and I'm like, but he needs him. They almost needed that character for this story arc to me, you know, but it wasn't what all the other shows were. I didn't like it as much. It's still Star Trek. It's still good aesthetic, and they're still dealing with the same things that they were kind of dealing with. And, you know, I didn't have a problem with any of the characters. They were all likable enough. Picard was not 100% Picard. He was kind of like 60% Picard.
And, you know, I'll admit, watching that first episode of Picard and seeing the render of the Enterprise D, I like that. I like the scene between Data and Picard in 10 Forward and Picard's dream. But it seemed like after that, everything just fell apart.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't. I used to watch Star Trek because I was amped up to see the next episode. It's like, oh, what are they going to do now? What story are they going to introduce? Or we got to see where this arc goes. And now it was, okay, let's just get through the season and see what happens. Whatever. It was not the joy that I used to have watching it, you know, and that was kind of how Discovery felt. It's like, okay, let me just watch the rest of this to see what happens. But there's nothing that makes me. None of the new stuff they introduced impressed me in the same way that it did in the past when new things or new people or characters would get introduced. I just wasn't enthusiastic with this new group. And again, there was plenty of the characters that I liked.
Yeah.
But I honestly think that the Orville does Star Trek better. I get such a Star Trek feel when I watch the Orville show even though Star Trek shows are Star Trek. I feel more like I'm watching old Star Trek when I watch the Orville.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I know we've only gotten 2 seasons of the Orville so far, and season 3 doesn't premiere until March 10th, but watching those episodes, it definitely has that 90s Star Trek feel.
Yes. And I mean, everything, even the stories, everything except the comedy is old Star Trek. But for me, I enjoyed the comedy. I enjoy the comedy because in Star Trek, we've only ever seen the military side. We follow the captains, or, I guess he was still Captain Sisko when he was on Deep Space Nine, although it wasn't a ship, but we always follow the captain. So we're always in the ranks. And I like what, the Orville does, because even though it's ridiculous Family Guy humor, it's more real world, and it makes it a little more relatable to me and give me that laugh, because I would always see, when you'd see Captain Picard say something and he'd walk away and you'd see a couple of the other officers kind of look at each other. It's like, I wonder what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And I like to see that brought out in the Orville. But I can understand that a lot of people could be the thing that would turn them off also.
And another thing is, whenever we did get a comedy, it usually came in the form of a Ferengi episode.
Yeah, the blatant comedic, characters, and yeah, I really loved how I really started noticing it. I mean, Data was funny, and I liked his character a lot, especially when he got his emotions. He took on a whole new level. But I really liked the Ferengis in Deep Space Nine, and they really shined, even though they were real tertiary characters. Some of those episodes with Quark and his brother were some of my favorite episodes. That whole thing with their mom and the Grand Nagus and all that stuff. Those are some of my most memorable episodes, and those are some of the funniest episodes to me. But I can easily see how people would be like, well, that's not Star Trek. They're making too many jokes and this and that. But that was great stuff.
It was, and you got to give Armin Shimmerman credit too for defining what it is to be a Ferengi. For all those other actors who would play a Ferengi after him, they pretty much looked at him like other actors would come in and look at a Vulcan and look at Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy defined what it was to play a Vulcan.
Yeah.
Because he was the first Vulcan.
Yeah, and he was an actor that took that role. So, like, he actually tried to figure out what a Vulcan might do. He took it serious. It wasn't just, what can I do with this character? He realized he was playing an alien, so he tried to be different than human. And he introduced almost a different kind of method acting. Back then, it's like you couldn't take it seriously. Oh, you're an alien. It's kind of the idea that movie actors couldn't take television actors seriously. If you got too much makeup on you, you would not think you're really in the role. And now it's just so different. And thanks to people like Leonard Nimoy and other, like Michael Dorn and those guys that were basically buried, but made a character all their own. And now it's almost like when we see them without the makeup, they're still that guy.
Exactly. When you hear Michael Dorn do a voiceover role and you hear him doing the voice in his Worf voice, you don't hear whatever the character's name is. You don't see whatever the character's name is.
No.
You hear Worf. And let me take care of this bot.
Yeah, as a fan, that's all I hear. I mean, it's just like, he was so good. It's not like I remember him just because he's Worf. It's because he was a good actor that played a great character. I rooted for Worf in all his storylines. He made me want, and I was super bummed when Tasha Yar died. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it made you wonder, where could her character have gone? If she had stayed the whole 7 seasons, where could that character have gone?
Yeah, that was
And
in
you know,
the in the time, and they would do that every once in a while. There was a few shows that had changed characters right in the middle, and then this show kills one of their main characters within a few episodes. I mean, forget the whole season. It was, she was a main. It was almost like killing number one or dead or any of them. She was such a part of the crew at that point with so few experiences.
mm-hmm. And it was great to see her come back in yesterday's Enterprise, because yesterday's Enterprise was the episode of Next Generation that hooked me in. Before that, I would watch the show, but I wasn't dedicated to it. But when I saw yesterday's Enterprise, that's what hooked me in.
Gosh, I mean, as far as Next Generation goes, like you say, you weren't hooked in immediately from the get-go. And that was kind of me too. I'd basically grown up with Star Trek being syndicated, There wasn't a time when it really wasn't on. So there was always reruns of this thing all through my childhood and teenage years. And then the new one came out, and I had the same attitude as everybody else. It was like, it doesn't even look the same. I can't go from toggle switches and push buttons to shiny glass touchscreens. It just, it was so different. I wasn't willing to give it a chance. And, and literally, like, Geordi's visor is what women put in their hair just like 2 years earlier, those banana clips. So it even made it look even more chintzy to me. But it started being on a little later at like 10 or 11 reruns, and I started watching it, and it hooked me, the characters and everybody, and I saw how it's the same and it's different, and that's why I liked it, because it's the same but it's different. They're not trying to be Kirk and Spock and Bones. There's aspects there, but they're not trying to recreate that group at all, and that's what I really liked, is they decided to make their own strong characters inspired by what we loved. Don't take anything away from it, just build off of it.
And that's exactly what they did. I mean, when it came to the original series, the episode that I first saw and I was hooked in right away was Tomorrow is Yesterday. I really loved that episode. And, at the time, I really liked any episode where it involved time travel. Now that's changed. It's like, oh, great. They're using the time travel crutch. Come on.
Yeah, they've done it. I mean, all that stuff that we saw as kids, it's like, I understand that it inspires so many ideas, but I also have to take in the idea that I look at it like you do. Oh, the time travel aspect. Oh, the evil twin idea. Oh, the parallel universe thing. All those things. They just happen to be in what I consume. Many other people I know might have only seen a few of these shows and movies that have these aspects in them. But me being a sci-fi nut and Star Wars and Star Trek, and for so long, and Terminator and, Avatar and all this stuff over and over, our group, our community has seen it a lot, and we are getting tired of it. But that's what I mean by you have to kind of take a step back. You have to, what do they say? Step out of the trees to see the forest, kind of thing. Because I look at it like you do. It's like, oh, this old story again. Here we go. Let's see what their twist is.
And, another thing I want to ask you, and I want to ask members of the chat right now, what's your thought whenever you hear about some of these newer fans that are saying us older fans are gatekeeping.
Well, some of them are. And to me, it's a little weird. You know, I've always looked at it like if I found out somebody liked Star Wars and we started talking about it, I would definitely have more knowledge than they would. I've not met anybody in person that comes even close. But it was that whole idea that, oh, and I would get excited and start saying, and this is when this and they went on this ship and they went over here, and it would create a question. They're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, you don't know that? And it just instantly I'm telling them about it. Not, oh, you don't know that? I can't talk to you anymore. You know, it was excitement that there was somebody that I had information that I could share. I don't care if you don't know it or not. I would have been surprised if you did. We're in a community now. Well, I'm in several, but even in yours, we're all Star Wars fans a little bit. I'm just a bigger one than some other ones. And now that I have a chance to actually talk with people who know a lot more than I do and are in it all the time, you just realize you can't be in anything 24 hours, 7 days a week. You know, that's when it starts becoming on another level, and you start going, oh, how do you not know that? God, that's so simple. And, you know, it just don't take it so serious. You know, yeah, it's fun, but make it fun. Keep it fun. If it's discouraging you, just take a break. Don't lose the things you love, you know, just because somebody else has a bad take on something or thinks you have a bad take on something. Because I will admit, I do think gatekeeping is real, but it's that same kind of thing. Like, I used to tease my cousin because he would always say he's a huge fan of Jack Black and loved all his movies, loves Tenacious D. But when the Tenacious D movie came out, he did not like it at all. And I said, you're not even a fan of Jack Black. That's his comedy. But it's kind of a different thing, you know. He still has all the knowledge, and he, you know, his fandom is just not as high of a percentage as mine is. No biggie.
Yeah.
I feel bad that people put somebody down for not knowing as much. Sorry.
I'm sure a lot of us, you know, get in that situation where we don't know something. Well, fine. Teach me. Tell me the information I'm missing. And I do want to say hello to Captain Trek. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I do think that too much is made of gatekeeping, to be quite honest. Yes, there are people who do. However, I think it's also been treated like revisionist history. If you deny the past and rewrite it so that it is nothing like what it was before, you destroy what existed. You've taken the history out of it. And a lot of things that happened in Star Trek were historically based. Granted, there were names were changed. There were situations that were changed. There was like the one where, you know, you had the guy that was black on one side, white on the other, and vice versa. It was obviously about racism, but it was dealt with in a way that was not confrontational. This is something.
Very true.
This is something that's done, at least not on the human aspect. Between them, it was, but because they were set out on destroying each other, and they did eventually. But everything now is the in-your-face variety. We got to do it now. You know, this is done for a generation who, you know, we got to keep them from picking up their cell phones. Because they're going to pick up their cell phones and we don't want to miss anything. So, boom, 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 boom. It's lost the flavor. It's just not. And to be quite honest, the writing is, CSI in space. It's not really Star Trek.
No, we're not getting those thought-provoking stories that we used to get, whether it was the original series or any of the spin-offs that we got from 87 to 2005.
Mm-hmm. And there were people I know that liked 2009 because it was a popcorn flick. I personally couldn't stand it. That's just my opinion. But again, it was also presented as an alternate universe. So it never was presented as being this reality. Whereas the new stuff is presented so far as being in this reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what's going to happen with Picard, why they're choosing to go in a year into the future. Like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, that was a question another YouTuber and I were discussing on Wednesday's Pop Talk that I try to do every Wednesday at 8, 9 o'clock, and always try to do those live. But we were talking about that, how this next season of Picard, they're coming to current times, and we were speculating, are they going to try to do their own version of the voyage home? Because if they are, it's not going to work. It's not going to be as effective as the voyage home was. The voyage home was a fish out of water story. And I'm not saying that because they had to get 2 whales. I'm saying you had Kirk and crew come back to the 1980s in an environment that they're not familiar with because it's nothing like where they're from. And, they have to quickly learn about money. They, don't know how everything works in that particular society. And it was funny to see Kirk as they're walking across the street and the taxi cab almost hits them. And the taxi driver says, "Watch where you're going, you dumbass." And Kirk goes, "Well, double dumbass on you." And during the movie where Spock is, trying to use the colorful metaphors, and he even says to Kirk, "It's now a good time for a colorful metaphor."
I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine Spock going, "Fuck you, Captain"? Well, now you can.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Not double dumbass on you. Not, whatever. I'm sorry, that just makes me cringe. I can say it. Spock shouldn't. Or, Picard shouldn't. It's just, these are supposed to be more enlightened times, not whatever the blazes this has become.
I could see Picard maybe saying bastard, but that's about it.
Bastard, yes.
But no, I totally get what you're saying there.
I mean, I can hear him saying a few words that we can't say on YouTube because they're British, but because they're throwing around like we throw around dude. It's just, that's life. But that's one thing I like about the Orville. I mean, I don't care if Riker or somebody drinks a beer, but sure as hell ain't going to be on the bridge.
No, it's going to be in their quarters. It's going to be in 10 forward.
Yeah. I mean, we know there's whiskey on board the Enterprise D because Scotty got some. And you didn't find out what it was till later. Yeah. But I do like that they did a a back when the original series, where he got out a bottle. You know, what is this? It's green. Data does the same line. What, you know, Scott asking, what's this? It's green. I mean, they honored the original series, just that one little line.
Yep.
I mean, this is
It was
where,
an appropriate callback.
Yes, callback. That's what I was looking for. But that's the thing. This is where the distinction comes between what I call Generation 3 Trek, which is current Trek, and Generation 2, which is everything beyond the original series. Generation 1 would be basically the original series and the animated series. Generation 2 is everything beyond that until 2005. And then this would be the third
Guys, I'll be
generation.
right back. Go ahead and continue the conversation.
I can tell we don't necessarily fully agree, but I'd be interested in learning more what you think. By the way, we've never talked before. Nice to meet you.
Oh, hello. Are you what I think about the different generations of the fans, or about?
Well, about the different iterations of Trek. How it's, to me, this is my perspective. To me, it seems that the second generation Trek honored the first, and that the third has just said, whatever.
Well, yeah. So we're doing third generation. I guess would be considered what's on right now. Is there any shows that have been canceled that are considered third generation now?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Everything is third generation would be like Discovery and.
Okay, because I mean, I know Picard, I know Discovery, and I know Lower Decks. I'm not sure. I have not. The only thing I haven't watched of Star Trek is that YouTube series, I guess, that was supposed to be a continuation of the original.
Oh yeah, there was.
That's the only thing I haven't seen, and I hear it's really good, so I'll probably watch it
is.
eventually.
It is good.
But I mean, there's definite distinction. I mean, it's a real similar thing with Star Wars, because the shows these particular IPs are popular, we're talking 70s, 80s, and then there's a large lull. There's several years where nothing's really happening, and only the fans are keeping the dream alive, more or less. Yeah. And then they come out with some new stuff. You know, with Star Wars, it was the prequels, and with Star Trek, we got TNG, which I touched on this a little bit earlier. As an old school fan, I love this stuff. You know, as a kid, the old Star Trek's what I know. That is Star Trek. How can you change it? What are you doing? But it depends. To me, a lot of it has to do with your willingness to give it a chance first. You know, like, I've watched all the new stuff. I at least gave it all a chance. I watched it all the way through and tried to stay in the story and all the stuff. I understand what they're doing, but I still walk away from it saying it doesn't make sense because it's not congruent. Are they changing things? What are they trying to accomplish here other than this story? Because all the aspects they bring in, the different factors start throwing it off, you know, like Spock having a sister and Spock having a disease and all this stuff. You know, it's like, well, how does this fit in at all? They were just writing a story and not getting any continuity from what they did before. It's almost like they did what Star Trek did and erased all the previous stuff and said, okay, we're going to write our own thing.
Yeah, and if they'd done it in a different timeline, that would have been great. If they'd said that this is the Beta timeline. Something happened right before Enterprise, and it just suddenly shut off into a different timeline, which was, just following it, but not exact. And then, of course, the convergence would go off further as time went on, which would explain why the Prime Universe and the Mirror Universe are so far apart. What they did explain in Discovery. I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah, that was the one involving the Guardian of Forever.
Right. If it had been an alternate timeline, but that had been the actual Prime Mirror Universe, I can see a convergence of time where you would go further and further and further away from the original. I know I'm not explaining well.
Makes enough sense to me. And I mean, I see where you're going, and they could easily have done that, and that all of a sudden makes all us old Trekkies go, okay, I'll buy it.
Because there would be people that would be going, okay, you know what? If it's a little different, I don't care. It's a different timeline. Okay, cool. Let's see what happens to this one. There would be people who absolutely cannot stand Discovery. If you were to make it a different timeline, they'd be on board.
It'd be way more acceptable. Yeah, and that is exactly what the Star Trek or Star Wars community is going through with the new movies. And so basically the new stuff, if you make it a different timeline, we're willing to accept it. And that was my big gripe over the last couple years, is it just seemed like
it wouldn't take
anybody,
away
Trek or Star Wars, it's like they were writing a story or a character into something just to undo how good it was.
Yeah.
That's how I got a feeling
They've
with
even done that
Spock
in Doctor
coming
Who.
in.
Yeah, they have.
Because with Spock coming in, I was like, oh, really excited to see Spock. And then I was like, why are they making him like this? Are they trying to change how great he was just to do it? That's what I didn't understand, is I don't see the end game, the end result for them. I don't see them driving up sales with the way they're presenting the product.
Well, why do you think that why do you think that Egomos had to basically all but give away the new stuff?
Yeah. I mean, we've all seen it. Marketing is not what it was. I don't expect there to be as many action figures and collectibles and things of stuff like there used to be, just because children really don't interact with toys the way we did in past generations. But there's such a lack of everything because there's a lack of interest from the fans. We're not excited for the new stuff. I mean, Star Trek, I've grown up with it my whole life, and this new stuff is just kind of like, I'll watch it to see what happens, but I have like no enticement to go out and buy the series later on and things like that. I don't, I'm not a huge Star Trek collector, but I have a few Star Trek things because it's something I've loved. And it's all old stuff.
I had when they had the motion picture, I had the action figures. I had a lot of different things that the playset that they had available. It was just this. I'm just looking at it going, I don't know. I mean, they would literally have to give. I would buy, let's say, a Defiant, and if they wanted to give me whatever ship, that's fine, except the pizza cutter. That one I can't stand. I'm sorry.
I'm right there with you. Nope. You don't have to apologize here, Captain.
I just call it the USS Pizza Cutter. Because that's what it looks like to me.
Same here. And
Okay,
even
is
with
there-
Playmates coming out with reproductions of the 90s figures and making Discovery figures, they're only going to sell to collectors. And you know what merchandise is going to sell? It's going to be merchandise based on the original series, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and the original 10 movies.
Yep. Here's the only way that Discovery stuff is going to sell. If you include it with the other stuff. You're going to have to put out different packs. Each pack will have, different characters in it. One of the characters will be a Discovery character. Why? Because nobody will buy it on its own.
Mm-mm.
Well, if you're putting out a lot of merch, that would probably be the series that would have the least amount of purchases. Just because, and it's not that it was bad. It's just all those other series have such fantastic characters.
Yeah, but I mean, I honestly believe what they're going to do is they're going to come out in a box, which is like, let's say, a shoebox size type thing, and they're going to be, let's say, 4 or 5 in a row. They're going to have the name on them, blah, 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 blah. One of those figures is going to be a Discovery figure. It may be 2 or 3, but maybe 2 or 3 figures. But one of those characters is going to be a Discovery character. Why? Because there's no way anybody's going to buy those characters by themselves.
Nope.
But if they do that, they can create a market.
Right.
For some of these characters, because they'll be harder to get. People will see them and go, "Oh, I didn't even know they had that."
Oh, no, there are going to be some people that go, I'm not going to get it because it's got this in there. But then you're going to have the hardcore collectors who are going, I don't like this, but I like the rest of this stuff.
Yeah, I could easily see Voyager, like people wanting the ship. And then if they did action figures, you'd probably want Janeway just for the sake of having all the captains.
Oh,
but then after Janeway, I would be concentrating. I mean, I would be even wanting to get Enterprise stuff. Scott Bakula's series. I'd want to get stuff for that series more than these other ones, just because I liked all those characters so much more. And it's a hard curve, man. With Voyager, I consider the least best of those, but it's still so much better than what we're getting now.
I would have to say that the Emmy Award-winning episode of Voyager, the Threshold, is by far vastly superior to every single episode I have seen of Discovery.
And speaking of Threshold, if I'm not incorrect on my dates, I believe it celebrated its anniversary yesterday.
I believe so. I believe you're correct.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back real quick before I forget it. But somebody asked about the other shows. When I was growing up, I think Next Generation came out when I was in high school. So the attraction was, wow, it looks really futuristic, much more so than the old Star Trek did. And I told how I got hooked into the Next Generation. But because Next Generation was so good, because somebody asked me if I was excited for the next series that came out, when I'm not sure the order now. Was it Deep Space Nine was the next one after Next Generation, right?
Yes.
And then It was Voyager and then Enterprise.
Correct.
Okay. Now each of those shows, because Next Generation, I had liked it so much and it did so well. When they decided to make Deep Space Nine, It's like, okay, it's Star Trek. They did Next Generation really good. Let's give this a shot. Oh, they're not on a ship? Well, let's give this a shot. I liked how they kind of tied it in, introducing the series with the Enterprise, like dropping off some characters. And, I liked, I can't remember his name, the Irish guy that went to Deep Space Nine from
O'Brien.
O'Brien, yeah. And
Chief
I liked
O'Brien.
his character. I
Miles
liked his
Edward O'Brien.
character enough from the old series. I was like, oh, he's on it. I'll totally give this show a chance. But it became good. I always watched through the first season with the idea in mind, okay, they probably don't know what characters, what they can really do, what works super good. But the second seasons are always so much better. So if you can get through those first few seasons, and I was still liking it, I was still looking forward to it, And then Voyager came out, and it's like, okay, now they're going with the female captain. Well, everything else has been really good. Deep Space Nine was an outstanding show. Let's see where this goes. And then it's like, oh, they're not even in the future. And then they get thrown out of, they're like alternate timeline almost. These people dealt with. And so it was interesting to see, that show kept me watching. But again, because the predecessors did well, it makes me give the next one a chance and kind of get excited for it. Worf comes on Deep Space Nine, loving the show. By that time, I'm loving all the characters. Bringing Worf back was just, the show's even more awesome now. And then Voyager came out, and I was a Scott Bakula fan forever. Quantum Leap and all his movies, Necessary Roughness and all the stuff he did in the 80s and 90s. So, of course, I was going to give that one a shot. And it's like, ooh, they're doing Enterprise before Kirk and those guys, huh? Ooh, well, we'll see where this goes. Let's see if they can pull it off. And they did it again. But they were, as far as I could tell, it was like they're staying true to the Roddenberry dream. They have his vision very well flushed out by now. They have the series. They know what shows don't work. They know what shows do work. They know what terminology Trek fans will accept and what they won't, because we get introduced to new words almost every week.
Yeah.
And it just, as they went on, and because those all do good, yep, I'm going to give Lower Decks a chance. Yep, I'm going to give Picard a chance. Yeah, I'll give Enterprise a chance. But they're not pulling their weight the way that every other series did before them. To be honest, my favorite of the three is easily Lower Decks. But again, that's because I enjoy that humor, that this is kind of pulling the curtain back.
Well, see, that's the thing. Of the series that have been out, Lower Decks, even though I don't like it, is the most Star Trek because they do use actual Star Trek terms. They're not just seemingly pulling stuff out of their butt.
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
No, there's a science behind it, and that's what makes it even better, because it's like, ooh, they're really trying to make it believable. They don't just make up terms, even though they're humans in our future. It's like, what are they talking about? It's like, oh, that's some new technology that we'll just come up with or get by that time. Everything, and they've kind of proven that over the years. They try to, is Star Trek science real? And they try to legitimize everything. And yes, it's all seems feasible.
Well, really, the only
Because
thing
they hired science consultants.
The only thing that doesn't really seem possible for now would be the transporter.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
yeah, for humans, yeah, I can easily see it for inanimate stuff.
now
But
for Replicator, that's actually being considered as probable to happen within the next 100 years. Or we could have a turkey dinner that we just pull out of the replicator. Oh, well, you want hamburgers? Okay, well, go ahead. Order your hamburger. I'll order my turkey. You order your.
See, DoorDash will be gone. It'll just be teleport dinner.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think in that case, it'll be kind of a combination between your transporter and replicator, which we could do because they're not really, it's not living matter at that point. But yeah, I don't think people are going to be transported anytime soon.
I think there's too much that it's like, well, how do you replicate your memory? How do you transport your memories? It's like, I understand. It's like, you could probably put my body in a different place, but am I still breathing?
I mean, that would, I think one thing would be, let's say you want to give a proper burial to somebody, and their body goes down in the ocean. Oh, we can lock on with transporters, beam the body up.
Well, geez, we wouldn't even have to dig the hole. We could just beam them right into the ground.
Well, that's true.
Very true.
Quit losing us jobs, man. No.
Oh. Probably got people in chat like their polar life form going, what? By the way, I like him.
No, that's funny. Even all that, and even all that stuff.
Yeah,
you were talking about before Pacific with all that. I was driving around when you were talking about that, all that wrestling stuff. It's like, God, man, I remember all that too. Just all those, way back when when it was
I've always
WWF.
Some interest in.
Still WWF, way back, and all those years, and then ECW comes and WCW and all those, the big merger and all that stuff, and even The Rock going into acting. Yeah, I think he obviously made it possible for all those kind of athletes to have legitimate careers, because before it was almost like they were cameo roles. But yeah, John Cena's definitely not going to have as many roles as Dwayne Johnson will, but he'll have a spot. I think he'll do okay in certain niches.
Yep. I mean, even Stone Cold tried to get out into Hollywood. Unfortunately, it's not meant for everybody. Even Hulk Hogan wasn't a big draw in Hollywood.
Yeah. I actually saw, I didn't see, I think Stone Cold was in a couple movies, but I took my brother to watch, I can't remember what it was called, but it was basically like a bunch of criminals get put on an island, and then you kind of fight to see who can get released off the island. But Stone Cold was in that one. I just can't remember the name of that. And that was pretty good, but yeah, he's not a big franchise type persona, I mean, Dwayne Johnson really, he has that charisma and he has that quick wit. He's been working behind a camera for so long. He does those smack talk interviews better than anybody. He can just come up with great verbiage and funny stuff, and his face is very animated, and all that just gives him more tools and more things that he can do, because we've all seen him as the big muscle man, but then he can do comedy roles just as easy in his movies.
Yeah, and getting back to that movie that Stone Cold was in, was it called The Condemned?
Yeah, yes, The Condemned. That was it. And that one's actually not bad. That's not a bad movie. I mean, it just, so much stuff, so many movies were coming out over those years. If it wasn't a blockbuster, you didn't hear about it, because there was like a blockbuster movie almost every month for years. And then we got into the Marvel universe, and then it really changed. That's when superhero movies showed they could work. Spider-Man, those first 3 Spider-Man movies really opened a floodgate.
Yeah, and especially this last Spider-Man movie, No Way Home. I went into the theater, and I'd already heard what other people had said about it, but I went into the theater thinking, all right, I'm going to make my own determination whether I think it's good or not. Because we all have different standards. We all have different expectations when we watch something or read something. And so I'm there sitting in the theater, and I'm watching the first 15 minutes. You get that Marvel humor, and I'll admit I've gotten to the point where I've grown tired of the Marvel humor. But then after that, the movie just kicked it into gear and kept getting into a higher gear as the movie went along. I mean, William Defoe as Green Goblin, he was eating up every scene he was in. Alfred Molina, eating up every scene he was in.
That's what I love about these new superhero movies, is they can be done well enough that real actors want to play these just completely psychopathic people. They're like, I've never played anybody like that before. This will be great. Mm-hmm. And they get to shine. I mean, they really get to be as good or as evil as they want to be, and it's not too much. Not for these kind of characters. Not at all. And it's funny, you go ahead real quick.
These are the kind of roles that actors look for, where they can be over the top.
Yeah, they can really shine. Like like Hannibal Lecter. We all know Anthony Hopkins got to play on a line that not many serious actors get to play. That that really riding the fence. Like, why does the things that come out of his mouth make me want to like him, but I know I can't like him? And now we've seen a few actors get to play similar kind of roles with varying degrees of success. We saw Christian Bale kind of do it in his early movie, American Murderer, or American something. And and again, in some of the more psychological thrillers, Nicholson and The Shining and things like that. But now they really get to go insane. I mean, and those method type actors really get to shine now. These are movies. Now they're doing comic book movies that are drawing in acts like DiCaprio, basically, people that's how we got Heath Ledger, and that's how we got Joaquin, Joaquin Phoenix. I was thinking he was the one that passed, but River Phoenix passed. And they just, because the other time those guys are, as when I used to hear of them in the past, method actors, the people used to it was almost like, oh, they're a little weird. They're a little in their own head. And it's like, no, there's people like that. And now there's roles that those people can just absolutely shine in on a level that you never even thought possible, And it's so nice. What we were talking about, the gatekeeping before, it's almost kind of a similar thing with Spider-Man, because they've put out so many different Spider-Man movies, and there's your hardcore Tobey Maguire fans and your hardcore, Garfield fans, and so they each have their goods and bads, and I'm just glad that Spider-Man is showing us how it can be done right, and I'm glad they're doing it. And it was probably best for them to stay away from Marvel. I know Sony's really fighting to keep that particular license. And I think they're doing good with it, so they should just keep going.
Yeah, they should. I mean, I've been saying this, after seeing Spider-Man, but Sony had three great things come out for it in 2021. One of them being Ghostbusters Afterlife, the other being the fourth season of Cobra Kai, and then, of course, Spider-Man No Way Home. Those
Oh,
three
see, now he's talking
properties
about all the
show,
stuff I don't know.
but those three properties show how you pay respect to what came before and you add another layer and do it respectfully.
Mm-hmm.
And you head it out of the ballpark with the fans, because the fans have been going to see No Way Home in droves. No Way Home is still taking in money, even a month later.
And I'll fully admit that Cobra Kai is making a statement. If you watch the show, it's not woke.
Mm-mm.
As much as it's trying to include modern perception, a lot more female roles, and they're not playing down the way the older characters talk. They're still letting them go with, like Johnny, he's still talking the way he did in high school. And I'm kind of shocked that they are letting it go. But being a fan of old things, it makes it real. It's like, well, there are people out there like that. I get a little frustrated when all I see all the time is this. It's like, okay, I get it, but geesh. So I relate to his character a lot, even though I'm not that bully type. But that older guy having to, he's willing to accept new things. Just quit stomping it into my head. So yeah, that show, and it's showing how you can do everything right. It's not taking itself seriously. These characters are they're a little over dramatic, but not to the point where you're getting sick of them. To me, it's like, it's still the idea of like, I'm kind of surprised at the high school rivalry thing kind of coming back. It's like, really? Is this what it's all about? Kind of, So, but that's what I mean by it doesn't take itself too seriously, but they're real world problems. They're relatable enough to everybody. These situations and these people still exist. So the show, as produced as it looks, because it has a little bit of to me, it looks 80s still. It looks all prefab and things like that. So it just, they pull it all off. They're not trying to throw money at it to make it good. They went a different route and used their hearts and their mind. They're like, this is the stuff we love. How can we make it better? Not what can we do to change it to make it better? They're just adding to it. They're not trying to take anything from what was there before. They're just adding to it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
I wish I could watch it because unfortunately I don't have Netflix, but
oh yeah, we did a couple years ago. We did away with cable because we there were more streaming companies coming online, and it's like, well, we can pay this amount for cable, or we can get 7 streaming companies for the same price
and get more.
Yeah, I mean, you can. And it's just, especially with all the promotions now, we have like 9 streaming services because some are free and things like that. And there's plenty to watch, that's for sure.
I mean, I got Disney Plus when it was like $100 for the year. When it's like, this is before everybody was going, oh, Disney, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, well, okay, I could cancel Disney, but no. There are things I still want to watch on it, and I paid $100 for the year.
And it depends on if, those fans that if you only get a streaming service for 1 or 2 shows, That's the difference. It's
Yeah.
well, I'm only buying for these two shows and I'm not really enjoying these shows. So why have the service? That makes sense.
That makes
But
sense.
for all the people who have children or babysit or have kids that come over, grandparents, all that stuff, Disney makes sense.
Oh, I have.
Just, if you've grown up over the past 40 years, you're not on Disney Plus to watch The Mandalorian.
No.
That's not why you have it.
I have 3 great nephews, anywhere from ages 6 to 9, and they're always watching Disney Plus. Either that or YouTube. I hate some of the stuff they watch on YouTube.
I just think as an older person and a younger person, it's nice because you can watch whatever you want in groups. You're like, I'm interested in this genre, and you can kind of just go into that. And that's the nicest thing about streaming. The thing I miss just what are the new shows? Like we don't get the commercials or anything, and that's like the only way I kept up on stuff. It's like, oh, a new show's coming out, so I have to do a little more research. I have to ask people what's actually on TV now. I have no idea other than live sports. I like the news. I don't know.
Same
And
here.
I mean, there are other things like Hulu. You can get the live TV option.
Yeah. So, and there's just so much I'm trying to catch up on now, and I'm starting to get behind like I'm already. Well, I know Discovery and Picard eventually will be out, but it's like all these animes and stuff everybody's been talking about, and I still have to catch up. I don't think I've quite finished season 2 of Cobra Kai, so I still got to binge a little bit of that.
Well, the series as a whole is worth it to just, take a couple weekends and sit back and watch it all the way through.
Yeah, that's what I did. I actually, whatever point I'm at now was nonstop. Like I just started, I was like, well, I had been wanting to watch it, and I put it on, and it was just like episode after episode after episode. Went to bed, woke up the next day, episode, burned through all of what I've watched, and it was like, okay, I need a break. And I know the next time I get into it, it's just going to be the rest of the series.
Mm-hmm.
Because the 4th one just came out, right? It's season 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and it's definitely worth the watch.
Yeah, because I still really haven't gotten into the high school fights yet.
Okay. I won't spoil anything then. But I've even had people recommend different animes to me, and I'm thinking to myself, hold on, let me finish with the ones I've started before I start on anything else.
Yeah. And even when the streaming services when we started getting them, and it was like, oh, you mean I can actually watch all these shows? I didn't get to see all the episodes I missed. So it honestly, with streaming, catching up on viewing never ends. There's too much content. You have to get advice and know what to invest your time in, or we could have like some people are feeling right now with Enterprise. Man, I just watched both series for no reason. This was a waste of my time. So we need those people to tell us what's good and what's bad, because there's too much content right now. There's a lot of garbage.
That actually brings up something that I was thinking about, and that is YouTube getting rid of the thumbs down thing. Even though there's plugins where you can still view what it is. Just YouTube by itself, you can't see. So, there are things that get a lot of thumbs up and a lot of thumbs down, whatever. But you can usually gauge how good something is based on the reaction. If you've got 25,000 thumbs up and 5,000 thumbs down, it's like, okay, that's usually okay. You're gonna be fine. You're more than likely gonna like it versus not like it. but if you got like 500 thumbs up and 25,000 thumbs down,
Yeah.
uh,
It's gotta
I'm gonna
mean
skip it.
something.
I'm
It's
gonna
gotta
skip
mean
it.
something.
And a lot of those were the corporate things, and it's like they didn't like that it was being hidden. They hid it because it's like, they didn't like the people were disliking their stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like what just happened with the whole Masters of the Universe thing. That's where I really started paying attention to how they were. It's like media didn't want somebody to know that there's people that don't like things. And that's kind of when it started. Now the result so far is we can't see the dislikes. But to me, that's a new issue for this cultural thing we're going through right now. Because the digital age is definitely a younger generation thing, and they are more in tune and susceptible to feelings than a lot of older generation people are. And I understand it, but being from that old generation, it's like you take the good with the bad. That's what makes you decide if you want to keep doing something, or if maybe you start feeling it's a waste of time and you start investing your time in other things. Negativity's good to a point, but we still need to know the numbers.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Everything needs to be in balance.
Yes.
Everything needs to be in balance. One of the things that I think Star Wars got wrong, quite honestly, is they were so focused on everything being on the light side and not balancing the Force. Let's get rid of all negativity, everything that could possibly be negative, and push it to the side, get rid of it. Then you got the Sith going, okay, here, we'll take it. Whereas now, if they were to actually come out with something that you had a balanced Force user who's able to draw on a more, I'd say, dark side without giving into the dark side, you would have a balanced user.
Oh yeah,
Just like
they've
somebody
always
on
had that one, the theory Anakin's the one, right?
right.
And I believe the theory they do up to a point. Like, we're kind of going a little deep on this subject, but Anakin wasn't supposed to bring all the Force into balance. He was the one that could balance the Force.
Mm-hmm.
He needed to teach other people how to do it. It wasn't all good or all bad. It's a little bit of both. It's that exactly what you're talking about. It's the balance between both sides. And that, unfortunately, is kind of an analogy of what we're going through right now. People believe you kind of need to be all one way or all the other way, light or dark. There's no in between. And it's like we need to find the balance. And unfortunately, we're seeing the experiment in everything. We're seeing it in our social media with Facebook. We're seeing it in our other kind of medias, social medias, but on a different level with the TikToks and all that stuff. And then on YouTube is even a whole different level. And then we start talking about, podcasts and YouTube show and all the stuff that's on a regular basis. And now we're dealing in the movies, but now at least the problem has gotten where everybody's aware of it in all the different areas right now. We just have to get through it. The problem is coming to a head right now.
Well, you've got people on YouTube. You've got the We Are Starfleet crowd, which is basically everything is wonderful, perfect from New Trek. And I know people from We Are Starfleet who I actually like, so that's not a total down on them. Then you've got the people that are on the, for lack of a better way of putting it, neurotic side, who I know people who like him and don't have an issue with it. But there's more negativity on that side. Whereas there aren't a lot of people that are in the middle.
Those are the people not usually creating content either, because they don't feel like they have something to say necessarily. We just might agree or disagree, and that's as far as we want to take it.
That's why I think I need to start making videos. I've been putting off on that because it's like maybe I don't have a voice. And then I've had people tell me, you know what? You're on every day anyhow. Make videos.
Yeah, I think there's in what we can actually see on media, I definitely think we're seeing a smaller portion and everybody's thinking it's a larger portion.
Yeah.
Like we hear from 10 to 20% and people are thinking, well, that's how 60% of the public feels. And it's like, no, that's just how those vocal people feel.
Yeah.
If you talk to all the vocal people, it starts evening out. And then if you start talking to all the people who don't usually talk, you know, that's why I don't make content, but I like to talk with people because I'm kind of more of a middle of the road. I have things I like and don't like, but I don't hate anybody for liking anything, and I don't hate people for not knowing as much. It's just like, let's talk and have fun.
See, that's exactly what I want. Is people who because there are people on my channel come onto my streams regularly. I don't agree with them. As long as they're respectful, I'm respectful of them. I don't agree with them, but I respect that they have the right to express how they think and they feel. And we do it in a way that is respectful. We disagree,
Exactly.
but we're not rude about it. And that's one thing
We're
that's been
adults.
missing. Exactly. That's one thing. If you don't agree with me, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Because I mean, I started really getting on YouTube to find out what was going on with Star Wars early last year. And, you know, because the YouTubers know more. They get the news out faster than I can. And the news I watch on television wouldn't have told me what was going on in Star Wars.
No. Well,
So
here's the
that's
other thing.
kinda,
There are a lot of YouTubers that go on Reddit. There are a lot of YouTubers that have other connections outside of YouTube that they're able to contact people. And I don't go on Reddit, so I wouldn't hear what's on there unless I'm watching a YouTube channel that does. And it's like, okay, cool. Doesn't make me want to go on Reddit anymore. But
yeah, and most of the other ones, I just hear too much negativity, and I'm not really interested in so much of the back and forth,
yeah,
like immediate stuff. So the YouTube enticed me that way. But it was even now as a huge Star Wars fan in the shows I'm watching, there's some content I can't watch because they're nitpicking some things, and it's like just watch it, just enjoy what they're giving us. I understand the show isn't exactly what I want either. What show ever is? I've never walked out of anything my whole life and been like, wow, they gave me everything I wanted. You just got to pull the expectations back a little. Just take what they give you and go from there. You know, I mean, everybody's had a show ruined halfway through the season by bad writing. We've been there.
Well, it's like what I said about the Book of Boba Fett. Maybe I have my expectations set too high after the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. That's why I'm disappointed in what I'm seeing right now with the Book of Boba Fett.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think they hyped it up a little too much too, because they were really seeming like it was going to be a slugfest every episode, and then it was like, okay, is the guy going to pull his gun out even? You know, it's just a different style that people weren't expecting, and that lost a lot of fans. You know, it's going to. I get it. Boba Fett is a huge favorite of mine. I'm just more accepting of what the show's giving me. That's all it is. I can't say I didn't want to see laser gun fights and him flying all over the place and just slaughtering everything. But that's not what we got. But
No.
I can't say what I've seen so far I won't watch again, because I have and I will. But it's just different. It's just a different Star Wars story. You know, and that's how I went into the new Star Trek shows. It's like, okay, it's just a new story. Let's see what they do. And it's, you know, they're just not, I can understand not meeting the fandom's expectations, but
Mhm.
it just needs to be it can have positivity, but we need some people that stay, or it can have negativity, but we need the kind of middle of the road to be talked about too. It's like, I understand your point and I understand your point. I get why people didn't like it and I get why people like it. And as a Star Wars fan, I can look at almost anything and go, well, that's not really Star Wars. And then I can turn around and go, okay, yeah, it kind of fits. You know, just what do you accept? And as long as it's close to the aesthetic, some stuff is hard to accept in any series, you know. Just like when they decided to do Deep Space Nine, and it's like, well, how can they do a series on a space station? How it's not going to be any good at all, you know. But that's how they make people change their minds about stuff. But we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like when I came to Deep Space Nine, my one hang up with the series. Now, keep in mind, I was 14 years old at the time, but the one hang up I had with the series was the runabouts, or as I called them at the time, the Reeky Deaky runabouts, because I was so used to Next Generation and the original series where they're on a starship that I didn't like the fact that you had to get on a runabout to go out and explore at a further distance.
I understand that. Oh, and I was gonna say too, it was when I was still driving around, but you were talking about the Book of Boba in the beginning, how he could, how could he not remember if he had his armor on or not, right? Because you were trying to figure out, why is he even looking in the pit? Wouldn't he realize? And I just put it next to, okay, we don't know exactly how long he was being digested. But he was being digested. He wasn't just up in the top somewhere. So I take it with the fact he got knocked into the pit being disoriented. We don't know how much, if he actually got hurt slamming into the barge or not. So the first impact, then he's in the pit for however long. So he's probably dehydrated, oxygen depraved. And he probably never got his bearings back. He probably's been dizzy or disoriented this whole time. And then he manages. The thing for me was like, oh, really? That Stormtrooper's oxygen pack's still working, huh? That was my nitpick. So, but then he gets some air. But then he fights for his life, basically, out of the sand and an animal. So I just think at that point, he's so exhausted and depleted, just everything. I think half his body is just moving off survival. Like
survival instincts kicked in.
You know, because you can be really asleep and someone can tell you, they're like, yeah, I came in while you were sleeping last night. And they're like, I asked you a question and you answered it, but you won't remember that conversation. But a lot of people, you know, do things without realizing it, and they're just sleeping. So when you're hurt and when you're unconscious and baking in the sun and still sizzling, that's how I thought of it. I was like, oh, he's totally wiped out. You know, he probably doesn't even realize anybody touched him. When they touched him and he reaches over and grabs him, that's probably his, you know, bounty hunter reflexes. Oh, somebody's touching me, and his body would have reacted. So he probably wasn't even fully conscious at that point. And so I think he's like, well, I didn't have my armor here, So it's got to be in there. I mean, that's, I see it both ways, though. It's like, because I thought that too. I'm like, really? He got hit in the face with a rifle butt. He's not going to remember that? But you got to think both ways, Dune Sea is super hot. There's two suns. I don't know.
I can definitely see your point of view.
And that I look at it like it can go both ways. You can, if you dig really deep in the details, you're gonna find stuff. So that those things, to me, it was like, okay, that was believable enough, but you're starting to get a little on a slippery slope. But the details for the rest of the series, they start filling things in and filling more and more in. So we'll see if they can continue it and keep continuity. That's my biggest thing now is I just don't know how they fit it all in now. But all the stuff, there's been so many things that people have detailed about Book of Boba.
Very true. Yeah, that's the thing. We're all in this waiting period now to see what happens in these last two episodes. And on that note, gentlemen, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank you, Padawannabe, for coming on. And I also want to thank you, Captain Trek, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you. Good seeing you, Captain Trek, and you too, Pacific.
And just so you know, you're always welcome to come back.
Oh, thank you, sir.
And I want to thank everybody who stopped by during the live stream. I want to thank Darius Munchausen for stopping by. I want to thank Jeff B for stopping by. Of course, Captain Trek, thank you. I also want to thank, let me find him here. There he is, the Nerdporial Lifeform. Yep. Thank you, brother. And just a little plug for Nerdporial. This Thursday at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern, he'll be having a sci-fi chat discussing Empire Strikes Back. So tune into that.
Ooh.
And you can also catch him and I over on the Star Wars Guys YouTube channel. I'll go ahead and post their link in the chat as well, and also in the private chat. But you can catch Nerdporial, myself, Master Paul, Brandon, the anime guy, Spock, Lord Crit, and Cash Money on Tuesday Night Trek. We'll be discussing the last 6 episodes of season 1 of Next Generation. And we'll also discuss a couple of episodes of The Orville. And then, of course, next Tuesday, we'll move on to season 2 of The Next Generation. So that's been a fun experience going through TNG with Paul because it's brand new to him.
Yeah, you guys are taking that stuff to a level I can't stay on. It's just like, okay, they're really deep on Star Trek, and it's been a while for me. It's fun to watch somebody else get into it.
Mm-hmm. It really is, because you then remember what it was like for your got into it. And
yeah,
I mean, for the three of us
all that
here.
excitement all over again. Yeah, it's fun.
So there you go. There's the link to his channel and the regular chat. Let me put in the private chat. So in the private chat, there's the link for the Star Wars Guys if you're not subscribed to them. And let's see, who else stopped by? Let's stop that Nerdporial.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this week goes for us in the viewing community.
I'm going to have to start pushing that channel, by the way. 315 subscribers. Got to get it up.
What's the name?
Mm-hmm.
The Star Wars Guys.
The Star Wars Guys?
Oh, his. Yeah. I thought you were talking about your channel.
Oh, no. Mine, I've just over 600 now, thankfully.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's me. Yeah, I was driving around. I was like, man, he's getting ready to start on some stuff I want to talk about. I saw your stream start, and I was walking out the door. I was like, shucks.
Well,
But
I
thank
appreciate you guys coming on. Oh, no
Oh,
problem.
that was cool.
Anytime.
That was cool. Yeah, anytime.
Also,
Is it the record
before
for you?
as far as viewership, the most viewership I've gotten for a live stream was for my 55th anniversary of Star Trek stream. That got over 55. That was set up for the channel.
Oh, you got lots of people. That's a good one. And you guys probably have lots of long streams because you guys talk about a lot of stuff.
I do try to talk about a lot of things on the Wednesday edition of Pop Talk, just because I like getting the interaction from people. I like getting their thoughts instead of hearing my own thoughts over and over again.
Yeah, but I'll watch a little more so I can be a little more aware if you're doing stuff and I can jump on with you. I'll talk. I got lots to talk about, but it was a pleasure.
Anytime. And I've also posted your link into the chat, and I'll put it in the description, Captain Trek.
Oh, thank you. It's appreciated.
Oh, not a problem. I would really like people to subscribe to your channel, especially with the way YouTube is, because the other day I was thinking to myself, I haven't received any notification about Captain Trek going live. Well, that's because YouTube unsubbed me from your channel.
Yeah, it's funny because there was one day I had 9 subscribe. 2 hours later, 10 were unsubscribed from me. I had not been on in that period of time. So it's not like I just ticked anybody off or anything like that. It's like, what? I get 9, I lose 10. Oh, this is fun. That was probably the day that happened.
Yep.